Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This once more Man Pop Mob Doc Wildcard, welcoming you to a review of sorts of horror movies. Today is Friday the 13th as I record this, and so I decided I might as well do a review of horror movies. I haven't seen the Friday the 13th films themselves yet. I plan on doing that tonight. As you can see, I am just in a rather unusual way today. This is Steamgoolie. This is an idea that came to me in a dream one day actually, because I never seem to have dreams at night. It's strange, they always seem to happen in the early morning. But anyway, I am Steamgoolie, the long-lost undead steampunk brother of Steamgoolie. This idea had come to me. I already had this top hat and this steampunk coat. And one day, as I was sleeping, an idea had come to me to combine these two with the legendary horror host Steamgoolie. Hence why I have all this face paint on. This is how he looks. And I decided to run with that. And I've had a lot of fun in doing so. I've gone to some conventions in which I have dressed this way, and people always seem to dig it. I do say so myself. In fact, I had my picture taken with a few people. I'll put the pictures right here. Now, the first one is me and Pomni from the Amazing Digital Circus, or to that. And then me and Obi-Wan Kenobi from the original Star Wars movies, the real ones as I see it. And finally me and Mina Ashto, or Pinky as her hero name is in My Hero Academia. That's one of the few anime even I say is worth it because it's full Americana. Those were from of Convention of the Shore. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And I had a lot of fun with these movies as well. This first one I'm reviewing is called Ghost of Mr. Chicken, as you can see. I haven't opened it yet even, but I saw it on TV. And this was a lot of fun to watch because this was like a more comedy than anything, like a murder mystery farce. This stars Don Knotts, and he plays a guy named Luther Haggs, and he thinks he's seen a ghost, but no one believes him, so he has to set out to try to prove that he did see a ghost, only to become entangled in a murder mystery. But again, it's a murder mystery farce type thing. I won't give away too much, but I will tell you this is a quality comedy movie. It's from back in I think the 60s. Let's see here. When was it from again? It was... Doesn't seem to say. Oh yeah, 66. From 1966. And that was fun stuff. This is a collection of all kinds of movies right here. This is 50 classic horror films, from even spanning back to the silent era. This one, for instance, this is from Phantom of the Opera, which was celebrated its 100th anniversary last year. It was made back in 1925, and it was a really brilliant movie in that even though it was silent, it had very little in way of like subtitle type things, very little text on the screen, and so people were pretty much had to use their imaginations to figure out what people were saying. and it was a really awesome movie. This starred the great Lon Chaney Sr. He served in World War II, hence the saluting of the heavens. Or was it World War I? Might even have been both. And he was known as the Man of 1,000 Faces because he had done all kinds of face paint in his career, and this was probably his most famous role. This was the original Little Shop of Horrors, which was also in this collection from way back in, I think it was some point in the 60s. It was in, 1960 itself. That was also a comedic movie, but like darkly comedic, in that a guy had a plant that was carnivorous and it actually fed on humans, and he had to start resorting to actually abducting people to feed the plant until eventually he was able to destroy it because it was getting out of control otherwise. But it's like a dark kind of comedy, very dark, but very enjoyable nonetheless. That was directed by the legendary Roger Corman. I salute them to speak his name too, because he also served in the military, served in World War II. That I remember for a fact. All kinds of quality stuff, and Night of the Living Dead is also in this, the original Night of the Living Dead. Very unnerving kind of a movie from the atomic age, when people were worried that the atom bomb was going to cause living beings of all kinds to mutate and become, as in that was in case they're zombies. The dead had risen from their graves due to the radiation, and it was affecting them and causing them to attack living beings and causing them into zombies, and so a vicious cycle continuing until eventually the cops and the army were able to put an end to it. Very good stuff. I think we can agree this is very eye-catching. Bit of dark humor there for myself. This is Saw 10. This was in 2003, and this is actually not so much, it's the 10th installment, but it takes place between Saws 1 and 2. This is John Kramer, as Jigsaw's actual name was, had gone to Mexico attempting to find a cure for his cancer because he had heard about a program that was supposed to cure cancer being set up, and was desperate. However, it turned out they were all scammers, and so Kramer took it upon himself to try to make them see the light using any means necessary. This was a return to the original kinds of Saw movies, the first 3, which I felt worked, but the 4 through, and Jigsaw also was a good one, but 4 through Spiral I didn't even watch because I had heard the reviews of them, how they're mainly just torture for the sake of torture and blood for the sake of blood, that kind of thing, and not really anything that was really worth it to me. But this one was a really good one, and with a very shocking twist end. Those of you who've heard some of my voices in games will probably recognize this voice that I use from time to time. This is my Hannibal Lecter voice. He is the starring character of this movie. He was Dr. Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter, and he was the lead, or would he be considered co-lead villain? I'm not sure. In this movie, this was from back in 1990, and this was one of the few horror movies to have ever won an Oscar for Best Picture, which is the highest of the Oscars as far as I'm aware. because that's a culmination of everything that goes into the making of a movie. In this, the FBI is trying to apprehend a criminal known only as Buffalo Bill. Buffalo Bill was actually based off of a real-life figure and was using women for nefarious purposes. I'm not sure if I can even say about what they were in this, and not getting kind of strikes on YouTube. But yeah, very disturbing movie. Very good for it. And the FBI, in order to apprehend Buffalo Bill, tried to use Dr. Lecter, well, doctor to put it in air quotes, a psychiatrist, to track down, figuring that a killer would know how a killer acts and try to hide and that kind of thing. And so they enlisted the help, for lack of a better term, of Dr. Lecter. And a very, very disturbing movie. I loved it for that. Definitely would recommend this. Vincent Price, undisputed master of horror in cinema, in 3 movies based on the undisputed master of horror in literature, Edgar Allan Poe. He had served in the military, hence my saluting of the heavens. I've only seen the one, Pit and the Pendulum, so far. It's loosely based on the original story, which is difficult to make an actual movie, full-length movie out of that story because it was relatively short. But yeah, his character slowly loses his mind because he thinks his wife was buried alive, and then he starts to actually commit murder. Very good stuff. In the original short story, it was a man during the Spanish Inquisition was trapped in a dark and seemingly inescapable pit, but he managed to escape eventually, only to be bound down to a table with a pendulum swinging back and forth and very slowly descending. And it was just a really bizarre and unnerving tale because it showed just how dark Poe's mind could get to think up of such a thing. Very good stuff. This is also based on 5 of Poe's stories, read out loud by Vincent Price as well as others. And this was, I think I've only seen one of them so far. It's called Extraordinary Tales. And I would definitely recommend this. Even though I've only seen the one thus far, I would definitely recommend it just for that one alone. House on Haunted Hill was not so much a horror as it was more of a thriller kind of a movie. It was actually made into a parody by Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, Elvira's Haunted Hills, which was a comedy, but this was a very dark kind of movie in which 5 strangers were invited to a mansion and were trying to keep alive. If they could all keep alive, they would each receive $10,000 in cold hard cash. It's difficult to describe this one other than it wasn't really all that scary, more of a thriller, but nonetheless a very good thing to watch. Definitely would recommend it. And finally, Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2. This stars Bruce Campbell in a darkly comedic kind of a thing. I'm pretty sure this is the one in which he replaces his own arm with a chainsaw. That might have been the first one. And he has the boomstick, as he calls it, a shotgun. And I think it's also the one. I can't remember. I can't believe I can't remember. But I think it's also the one in which there's several tiny clones of him that come and attack him. I don't remember all that much of it because it's been a while, but yeah, definitely cool movie. And to give you something to think about, ladies and gentlemen, and try not to use Google or any other search engine for this. Try to watch the movie itself, if you can, and try to answer this question. This is from the horror version of Trivial Pursuit in The Silence of the Lambs from back in 91. I can't believe it. Which kind of bean does Hannibal Lecter say he ate along the liver of a census taker? If you think you know the answer, ladies and gentlemen, put it in the comments and I will tell you whether you're right or not. So yeah, this has been my Steamgoolie edition of the Friday the 13th special for this most macabre of days. So if you dig what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen, please consider subscribing. I will be back. Fairly well and have a nice Friday the 13th.